The night they called her broken was the night destiny quietly changed the fate of a king. The full moon hung above the frostpine pack like a silver lantern, washing the ancient stone circle in pale light as every wolf gathered for the annual blessing ceremony. The cold mountain air carried whispers instead of celebration, and every whisper seemed to find Evelyn Carter. At 22, she stood alone near the edge of the clearing in a simple grey cloak, her hands folded tightly to hide the faint trembling she refused to show. Her gift had always been quiet. She eased pain. She calmed frightened children. She soothed injured animals that trusted her before they trusted anyone else. Yet in a world that admired warriors, quiet miracles were mistaken for weakness. Elder Marcus stepped onto the ceremonial platform, his weathered face unreadable beneath the moonlight. Around him stood the pack's finest alphas and betas, proud shoulders straight, confident smiles already celebrating futures they believed were guaranteed. Evelyn searched the crowd for a single familiar face willing to meet her eyes, but neighbors she had known since childhood looked away as though she had already disappeared. "Evelyn Carter," the elder announced, his voice carrying across the silent clearing. "Step forward." She obeyed, each step feeling heavier than the last. The smooth stone beneath her boots seemed colder than ice. The elder lifted an ancient silver medallion engraved with the crest of the healers, then slowly lowered it again. "The moon has remained silent," he declared. "Your gift has never awakened as it should. You have failed every trial required of a pack healer." A murmur swept through the crowd like a restless wind. Evelyn lowered her gaze, though she already knew what was coming. "From this night forward," the elder continued, "you are released from the Order of Healers. You will carry no title and hold no sacred duty within Frostpine Pack." The words landed gently, yet they weighed more than any stone she had ever lifted. She had prepared herself for disappointment, but not for emptiness. Somewhere behind her, someone sighed with relief. Another voice quietly whispered, "Broken Healer." The name spread from one person to another until it became louder than the elder's judgment. Evelyn closed her eyes for only a heartbeat, refusing to let tears answer them. Her late mother had once told her that kindness was strongest when no one applauded it. Tonight those words felt painfully distant. Elder Marcus placed the untouched medallion back into its velvet case. "You may leave." No one stopped her as she turned away. No friend reached for her hand. Even the wolves she had once treated looked toward the ceremony instead of the lonely path leading into the forest. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the night, settling across her dark hair and shoulders as she crossed the wooden gate marking the border of the packlands. Beyond it stretched miles of towering pine trees wrapped in moonlit silence. She had no destination, only the certainty that staying would hurt more than leaving. She walked for nearly a mile before the last echoes of the ceremony disappeared behind her. The forest welcomed her with stillness instead of judgment. Then, just as she began to believe she was truly alone, a low sound drifted through the trees. It was not the cry of an ordinary wolf. It was deeper, weary, almost heartbreakingly restrained, as though something unimaginably powerful had forgotten how to ask for help. Evelyn stopped. The sound came again, carried softly through the falling snow from somewhere beyond the dark pines. Every instinct warned her to keep walking. Every instinct she had ever trusted as a healer told her someone was suffering. Without another thought, she turned toward the mysterious call and disappeared into the silent forest, unaware that every step was leading her closer to a secret capable of changing both her life and an entire kingdom forever. The farther Evelyn Carter walked beneath the towering pines, the quieter the world became until even the memory of her pack sounded like another lifetime. Snow settled across the forest floor in a soft white blanket, untouched except for the narrow trail she left behind. Her fingers had grown cold inside her worn gloves, but she barely noticed. The mysterious cry echoed again, low and strained, drifting through the trees with the lonely rhythm of a fading heartbeat. It was unlike any wolf she had ever heard. There was strength hidden beneath the pain, as though the creature had spent every remaining ounce of its will refusing to surrender. Evelyn hesitated beside an ancient cedar whose branches stretched across the night like protecting arms. Yet another lesson, one her mother had whispered countless times while tending wounded birds and frightened foxes, spoke louder than fear. Pain did not erase the need for compassion. She followed the sound deeper into the woods until the trees opened into a small clearing illuminated by silver moonlight. There, resting beside a frozen stream, lay the largest wolf she had ever seen. Even curled against the ground, it looked nearly the size of a horse. Its coat was black as midnight, except where strange silver markings shimmered beneath the fur like faint cracks of light trapped beneath ice. The animal breathed slowly, each breath uneven, while dark shadows seemed to ripple across its body in ways that made no natural sense. Evelyn remained perfectly still, allowing the wolf to notice her before taking another step. The enormous creature slowly opened its eyes. They were a striking shade of pale silver, bright even beneath the darkness, and for one suspended moment neither of them moved. It was the same silent loneliness she had carried in her own heart since leaving Frostpine. Carefully, she lowered herself to one knee several feet away. "I am not here to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind weaving through the branches. "If you want me to leave, I will." The wolf never looked away. A faint shiver passed through its massive body before its head lowered again onto the snow. Evelyn slowly reached into her satchel, removing a clean cloth, a small jar of herbal balm, and a flask of warm water she had carried since leaving home. She moved carefully. Instead, the wolf remained still, as though it had quietly accepted her presence. When she finally came close enough to examine it, her breath caught. The silver markings beneath its fur were not natural patterns. They resembled twisting vines made of living shadow, winding across its shoulder and chest before disappearing beneath the thick coat. Every few seconds they pulsed with a dim glow that sent another wave of weakness through the creature. Evelyn had never seen anything like them in any healer's journal. She gently pressed her fingertips against the fur near one of the strange marks, careful not to cause discomfort. The instant her skin made contact, a gentle warmth spread through her hands. She froze. That warmth had always appeared whenever she comforted frightened animals as a little girl, but never this strongly. Golden light, soft as the first rays of sunrise, shimmered faintly around her fingertips before disappearing almost as quickly as it had appeared. The wolf released a slow breath, and for the first time since she had arrived, the tension in its body eased. One of the shadowed markings faded ever so slightly, revealing healthy fur beneath. Evelyn stared in disbelief. She had not intended to heal anything. She had only wanted to comfort a suffering creature. The wolf slowly lifted its head again, those silver eyes now studying her with quiet curiosity rather than guarded caution. Somewhere far beyond the clearing, a hunting horn echoed through the mountains. The wolf's ears immediately lifted, and a flash of concern crossed its intelligent gaze. Evelyn instinctively looked toward the distant sound before turning back to the mysterious animal. Whatever was searching these woods, she suddenly knew one thing with absolute certainty. It was searching for him. The hunting horn echoed a second time, closer now, followed by the distant rhythm of horses moving carefully through the frozen forest. Evelyn Carter immediately understood that whoever carried those horns expected to find something important before sunrise. She looked back at the enormous black wolf, whose silver eyes had shifted toward the sound with unmistakable awareness. This was no ordinary animal reacting to unfamiliar noise. It understood exactly who was searching for it. The realization sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the winter air. "Can you stand?" she asked softly, knowing how foolish the question sounded. The wolf blinked once, then slowly pushed itself onto unsteady legs. It was magnificent despite its exhaustion, taller than her shoulder even while weakened. For a brief moment it swayed, and Evelyn instinctively stepped closer, placing one hand against its thick fur to steady it. The same gentle warmth returned beneath her fingertips, spreading through the mysterious silver markings. The wolf released a quiet breath that almost sounded like relief. Snow drifted between them while the forest seemed to hold its own breath. Another horn echoed, this time from a different direction. Whoever searched these woods was surrounding the clearing. "You cannot stay here," Evelyn whispered. "Come with me." She did not know why she expected the creature to understand, yet it followed without hesitation. Together they moved away from the frozen stream, weaving through narrow trails hidden beneath towering evergreens. Evelyn remembered every forgotten path from childhood visits with her mother, who had gathered herbs deep within these mountains. Nearly half a mile away stood an abandoned ranger cabin that most travelers no longer used after newer roads were built farther south. If the roof had survived another winter, it would offer enough shelter until daylight. The journey was slow. Several times the wolf paused as if struggling against invisible weight pressing upon its body. Each time Evelyn rested her hand gently against its shoulder, the faint golden warmth returned, and each time the strange shadowed markings became a little less pronounced. Tonight it answered questions she had never thought to ask. At last the old cabin appeared between the trees, its weathered walls dusted with snow and its stone chimney leaning slightly with age. Evelyn pushed open the creaking wooden door. The cabin smelled of cedar and ash. She quickly gathered dry firewood left beneath a covered bench and coaxed a small fire to life. Orange light danced across the rough wooden walls, pushing the darkness into the corners. The wolf hesitated at the doorway before stepping inside. As the warmth reached its body, it lowered itself onto the worn rug near the fireplace. Evelyn knelt beside it once more, carefully brushing away snow that had settled across its thick black coat. "You have been carrying this pain for a long time," she murmured. "I wish I knew how to help." The wolf slowly lifted its head. Those remarkable silver eyes never left hers. Then something impossible happened. A soft glow spread across the mysterious markings, brighter than before, filling the quiet cabin with pale moonlight. The air itself seemed to shimmer. Evelyn instinctively stepped back as the massive wolf closed its eyes. Light wrapped around its body like drifting mist. Its powerful frame gradually changed, shrinking as the glow concealed every detail. The transformation lasted only a few silent seconds before the light faded completely. Where the great black wolf had rested moments earlier now lay an unconscious man with dark hair falling across his face, his expression peaceful despite obvious exhaustion. A simple black cloak remained draped across him as though the forest itself had hidden his dignity. Evelyn stared in stunned silence. She had heard stories about gifted shifters all her life, yet nothing had prepared her for witnessing such a moment with her own eyes. The stranger slowly opened those same unmistakable silver eyes and looked directly at her. His voice was low, calm, and surprisingly gentle. "You should have left me in the snow," he said quietly. "Instead, you chose kindness." Evelyn remained frozen beside the fireplace, her heartbeat louder than the crackling logs. The stranger watched her with steady silver eyes that carried neither fear nor pride, only quiet exhaustion. His face was striking yet worn by countless sleepless nights, and the strange shadow-like markings still lingered along his neck before disappearing beneath the collar of his dark cloak. She slowly exhaled, reminding herself that whatever he was, he had been the wounded wolf she had chosen to help only moments before. "You can speak," she whispered, almost to herself. A faint smile crossed his face before fading just as quickly. "I have always been able to speak," he answered softly. "Very few have ever listened." Something about his calm voice eased the uncertainty. Growing inside her, she reached for the iron kettle hanging above the fire and poured warm water into a wooden cup before adding dried mountain herbs from her satchel. She offered him the cup, and after a brief hesitation, he accepted it with both hands. His fingers were rough with old calluses, the hands of someone accustomed to responsibility rather than comfort. "My name is Evelyn," she said quietly. "You should not remain alone out here. Winter is unforgiving." The stranger looked into the steaming cup before answering. "You may call me Lucien." He offered nothing more. No family name. No explanation. No questions about her. It felt as though he had spent years carefully hiding pieces of himself. Evelyn did not press him. For several peaceful minutes neither of them spoke. Then Lucien suddenly stiffened, closing his eyes as though struggling against something invisible. A faint silver glow flickered beneath the skin of his neck before dark shadows returned, spreading briefly across his hands. His breathing became uneven. Evelyn instinctively moved beside him. "May I?" she asked. He gave the smallest nod. She carefully placed her hand against his wrist. Once again, golden warmth blossomed beneath her fingertips, brighter than before. It flowed gently through his arm like sunlight reaching frozen ground after a long winter. Lucien released a slow breath, and the shadows immediately retreated, leaving only healthy skin behind. His silver eyes widened with unmistakable surprise. "That has never happened," he murmured. Evelyn quickly pulled her hand away. "I did not do anything." "You did," he replied, studying her with thoughtful curiosity. "Whatever burden I carry becomes quieter whenever you are near." She lowered her gaze, uncertain whether to believe him. For years everyone had insisted her gift was incomplete, too weak to matter. Yet twice tonight it had accomplished something she could not explain. Before either of them could speak again, the distant sound of hoofbeats echoed beyond the cabin. Both turned toward the frost-covered window. The riders were still far away, but the rhythm was unmistakable. Lucien rose immediately despite his lingering weakness. His posture suddenly carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to command. He stepped toward the window without making a sound and watched the distant lights weaving through the forest. Evelyn noticed the change at once. The weary traveler had vanished. In his place stood a man whose natural presence seemed impossible to hide, even beneath simple clothes. "Are they looking for you?" she asked. He remained silent for a long moment before answering without taking his eyes from the darkness outside. "They are looking for someone they cannot afford to lose." Evelyn followed his gaze into the snowy forest where tiny lanterns flickered between the trees like wandering stars. She did not know who Lucien truly was, why mysterious shadows clung to his body, or why armed riders searched through the mountains in the middle of winter. She only knew that every instinct in her heart urged her to protect the stranger she had found beside the frozen stream, even though destiny was quietly preparing to reveal a truth far greater than either of them could yet imagine. The lanterns outside drifted slowly between the snow-covered pines, their golden glow appearing and disappearing behind heavy branches like distant stars searching the earth. Evelyn Carter instinctively lowered the cabin's window covering before another flicker of light could reveal the warmth inside. The fire crackled softly, casting long shadows across the weathered wooden walls. She turned toward Lucien, expecting fear, but found only remarkable composure. He remained standing near the window, his shoulders straight despite the exhaustion that still lingered in his silver eyes. It was as though uncertainty belonged to everyone except him. "If they are your friends," Evelyn whispered, "you should let them find you." Lucien remained silent for several moments before quietly shaking his head. "Not everyone who follows a trail hopes for a peaceful ending." His answer carried no anger, only careful experience. Evelyn studied his expression and realized he was listening to sounds she could barely hear. Whoever he truly was, his senses reached far beyond those of any ordinary wolf she had ever known. Another wave of discomfort suddenly crossed his face. The strange shadow markings returned beneath the edge of his collar, spreading across his neck like dark frost creeping over glass. His breathing slowed, and he steadied himself against the cabin wall without saying a word. Evelyn immediately stepped beside him. "It is happening again," she said softly. Lucien nodded once. "It always returns." Without hesitation, she gently placed her hand over the dark markings. Warm golden light flowed through her fingertips, brighter than ever before, filling the small cabin with a peaceful glow that reflected across the wooden ceiling. The shadows resisted for only a moment before gradually fading beneath the gentle warmth. Lucien closed his eyes as though the invisible weight pressing against him had finally loosened its grip. When he opened them again, surprise had replaced the quiet restraint he had carried since awakening. "You calm something that no healer has ever reached," he said. Evelyn slowly withdrew her hand, uncertain how to respond. "My pack believed my gift was incomplete." Lucien looked directly into her eyes. "Then your pack never truly saw you." His words settled into the silence between them with unexpected comfort. Before Evelyn could answer, the distant hoofbeats stopped. The forest outside became strangely quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then a clear voice echoed through the trees. "Search every trail." His scent vanished near the eastern ridge. More voices answered from different directions, organized and disciplined rather than frantic. Evelyn carefully peered through a narrow gap in the window covering. Riders wearing dark winter cloaks guided powerful horses through the forest with practiced precision. Their lanterns swept across the snow, illuminating every fallen branch and frozen path. She counted at least a dozen before losing track. "They are getting closer," she whispered. Lucien remained perfectly still. Yes. Will they find us? He glanced toward the fire, then toward the narrow back door leading into the deeper forest. Only if we remain exactly where they expect us to be. Evelyn quickly gathered her satchel, wrapping fresh herbs, clean cloths, and the remaining food she carried. Only that every choice she had made since entering the forest had quietly led her here. As she reached for her cloak, something caught her attention. Resting on the floor beside Lucien's discarded cloak was a small silver clasp she had not noticed before. It had likely slipped free during his transformation. She picked it up carefully. Engraved upon its polished surface was the image of a crowned wolf surrounded by an intricate circle of moonlit branches. Even though she had never seen the symbol in person, every child across the Northern Territories recognized it from old stories and ceremonial banners. It was the ancient royal crest. Evelyn stared at the emblem in stunned silence before slowly lifting her eyes toward Lucien. He noticed the clasp in her hand, and for the first time since they met, the calm expression on his face gave way to quiet concern. Lucien's eyes lingered on the silver clasp resting in Evelyn Carter's palm before he quietly reached for it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled between them, filling the old cabin with a warmth that stood in sharp contrast to the frozen wilderness outside. He carefully fastened the royal emblem beneath his cloak, concealing it once again as though it were a burden instead of a symbol of honor. "You recognize it," he said at last. Evelyn nodded slowly. Every child in the Northern Territories grows up seeing that crest during the Winter Moon Festival. It belongs to the royal family. Lucien lowered his gaze, offering neither confirmation nor denial. Some symbols carry expectations that become heavier than crowns. His answer only deepened the mystery. Before Evelyn could ask another question, voices drifted through the trees outside. They were much closer now. Through a narrow opening in the window she watched mounted riders stop in the clearing less than 100 yards from the cabin. Their horses stood quietly despite the cold, and every rider wore dark cloaks embroidered with the same crowned wolf she had just held in her hand. One of them dismounted and knelt beside the snow, carefully examining a series of tracks before looking toward the surrounding forest. "The trail ends here," he called. "Spread out. Search every cabin and shelter within 2 miles. Evelyn's heart skipped. She turned toward Lucien, expecting him to prepare for escape, but instead he closed his eyes for a brief moment as though making a difficult decision. "They are my royal guard," he said quietly. "They have served me faithfully for many years." Evelyn stared at him, unable to reconcile the humble stranger before her with the weight of those words. "Served you," she whispered. Lucien slowly met her eyes. There was no pride in his expression, only quiet honesty. "My full name is Lucien Ashcroft." The room seemed to fall completely silent. Evelyn had heard that name only in stories carried from distant cities and whispered around winter fires. King Lucien Ashcroft. The Alpha King who united the Northern Territories. The ruler whose wisdom had ended generations of conflict between rival packs. The sovereign who had vanished several days earlier without explanation, leaving the kingdom searching every mountain and valley. She instinctively stepped back, not from fear but from disbelief. "You are the Alpha King," she breathed. Lucien gave a single nod. "I did not tell you because titles change how people see one another. For one peaceful night, I wished to be nothing more than a traveler in need of help." Evelyn remembered the wounded wolf lying alone beside the frozen stream, the quiet gratitude in his silver eyes, and the warmth that had returned each time she touched his hand. A sudden knock echoed against the cabin door, firm yet respectful. "Your Majesty," a voice called from outside. "If you are within, please answer. We have searched without rest since your disappearance." Evelyn looked toward Lucien, uncertain what would happen next. He walked calmly to the door but paused before opening it. "There is something you deserve to know first," he said softly. "The shadows you have been healing are not an illness. They are an ancient curse. Every healer in the kingdom has tried to quiet it. None have succeeded. Until you." Evelyn shook her head. "That cannot be true." "It is," Lucien replied. "The moment your hand touched mine." The curse retreated for the first time in 7 years. Another respectful knock interrupted the silence. Lucien slowly opened the cabin door. The instant the royal guards saw him standing in the warm firelight, every rider stepped forward, lowered to one knee in the snow, and bowed their heads without a single command. Their captain's voice trembled with visible relief. "Welcome home, Your Majesty." Evelyn stood speechless behind him, realizing that the man everyone in the kingdom had been desperately searching for had been quietly saved by the healer her own pack had called broken. The captain remained kneeling in the snow until Lucien stepped outside the cabin and gently motioned for every member of the royal guard to rise. None of them spoke immediately. Relief filled their faces, yet beneath it lingered another emotion Evelyn could not quite name. It was worry, deep and unmistakable, the kind carried by people who had spent days watching someone they admired slowly disappear beyond their reach. Snow continued to fall around them in slow, silent circles while the first pale colors of dawn touched the eastern horizon. "Your Majesty," the captain said carefully, "the council feared the curse had finally overcome you. The entire kingdom has been searching without rest." Lucien nodded with quiet understanding. "I know." His voice remained calm, but Evelyn noticed the familiar shadow flicker briefly beneath his collar before fading again. The captain saw it as well, and his hopeful expression immediately softened. "It returned?" he asked. Lucien answered honestly. "Only for a moment." The captain's eyes shifted toward Evelyn. Until now she had remained near the cabin door, uncertain whether she belonged among royalty or should quietly disappear into the forest before anyone questioned why she was there. Instead, every guard looked toward her with respectful curiosity. Lucien stepped slightly aside, allowing the morning light to reach her. "This is Evelyn Carter," he said. "She found me when no one else could. She offered help without asking who I was." The captain placed a hand over his heart and bowed his head toward her. "Then the kingdom owes you a debt that cannot easily be measured." Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I only helped someone who needed it." One of the older guards exchanged a thoughtful glance with the captain before speaking quietly. "Your Majesty, forgive my boldness, but..." He hesitated as though struggling to believe his own words. "The curse has not touched your eyes since we arrived. They are brighter than they have been in years." Lucien looked toward Evelyn before answering. "Because she quiets it." Silence spread through the clearing. Several guards stared at Evelyn with open disbelief. The captain slowly removed a small leather journal from his bag and opened its weathered pages. "For 7 years," he said, "the greatest healers, scholars, and mystics have searched for an answer. Every record says the curse cannot be weakened by ordinary healing." He looked directly at Evelyn. "Yet standing here today, we have all witnessed what none of those records believed possible." Evelyn lowered her eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Lucien smiled gently. "Neither did destiny." Suddenly an elderly physician wearing the royal crest hurried through the trees, escorted by 2 riders who had remained farther behind. The physician stopped the moment he saw Lucien standing comfortably beside Evelyn. Astonishment spread across his face. He slowly approached, studying the king with careful attention before respectfully asking, "May I examine your Majesty?" Lucien nodded. The physician placed 2 fingers lightly against Lucien's wrist, closed his eyes, and remained perfectly still for several seconds. When he finally stepped back, his hands trembled. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The curse has not disappeared, but it has retreated farther than at any point since the day it began." His gaze settled upon Evelyn with growing wonder. "Young lady, what family of royal healers trained you?" Evelyn answered with quiet honesty. "None. My pack dismissed me yesterday because they believed I was a broken healer." Before anyone could respond, a royal messenger galloped into the clearing carrying a sealed parchment marked with the royal crest. He dismounted quickly and bowed before Lucien. "Your Majesty," he said with urgency, "the High Council requests your immediate return. The ancient archives have revealed something about the curse." Lucien accepted the message, read only the opening lines, and then slowly lifted his eyes toward Evelyn. "It appears," he said quietly, "our meeting was never an accident after all." By sunrise the royal procession had begun its journey toward Ashen-Crowned Citadel, the fortress that overlooked the northern territories from a ridge of snow-covered cliffs. Evelyn Carter rode beside Lucien in a quiet carriage, watching endless forests drift past the windows like waves of emerald and silver beneath the winter sky. Neither of them spoke often. Words suddenly felt too small for everything that had changed in less than a single night. Every now and then Lucien glanced toward her with the same quiet gratitude she had seen beside the frozen stream, and each time the faint shadows beneath his skin remained absent. It was the longest the curse had rested in years. Hours later the towering gates of the citadel slowly opened. Hundreds of royal guards stood in perfect formation while bells echoed across the stone courtyards. Servants, scholars, physicians, and council members gathered in respectful silence as Lucien stepped from the carriage. Their relief was unmistakable, yet their attention quickly shifted toward the unfamiliar young woman walking beside him. No one recognized Evelyn. Her simple grey cloak looked completely out of place among embroidered robes and polished ceremonial armor. Even so, Lucien never walked ahead of her. Instead, he matched every step she took as though making it clear she belonged at his side. Inside the ancient council chamber, towering stained glass windows filled the room with soft blue light. The High Chancellor carefully unrolled a fragile parchment that appeared older than the kingdom itself. According to the Chronicle of the First Moon, he said, the shadow curse cannot be defeated by force, power, or ordinary magic. It retreats only before the light of compassion carried by one whose gift heals without seeking reward. The chamber grew perfectly still. The scholar continued reading. When the cursed king loses hope, destiny shall guide him to the forgotten healer whom the world has rejected but the moon has already chosen. Evelyn felt her breath catch. Forgotten healer. Rejected by her own people only yesterday. The description echoed her life with unsettling precision. The High Chancellor slowly lowered the ancient parchment before turning toward Lucien. Your Majesty, we searched every noble bloodline for this healer. We never imagined she would come from no royal house at all. Lucien smiled gently. Neither did I. At that very moment the massive chamber doors opened once again. A royal attendant hurried inside and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, he announced, leaders from Frostpine Pack have arrived requesting an immediate audience. Evelyn's heart tightened. She recognized the name before the messenger had even finished speaking. Only one day had passed since they had declared her broken and sent her away. The council exchanged curious glances as the Frostpine delegation entered the chamber. Elder Marcus walked at their front, his confident posture noticeably humbled. The moment his eyes found Evelyn standing beside the Alpha King, disbelief spread across his weathered face. He looked from her to Lucien and then to the assembled council as though trying to understand an impossible dream. Finally he bowed deeply before the throne. Your Majesty, he said carefully, we recently learned that the young healer accompanying you once belonged to our pack. Lucien's calm expression revealed nothing. Once belonged? The elder lowered his eyes. We judged her too quickly. Silence settled over the chamber. Evelyn looked at the man who had dismissed her less than 24 hours earlier. Lucien slowly rose from his seat and descended the steps of the throne, stopping beside Evelyn rather than before the elder. You believed she had nothing to offer your people, he said with calm certainty. Yet she gave hope to an entire kingdom without asking for anything in return. No one answered. Even the council remained silent. In that unforgettable moment every person in the chamber understood that the greatest gift had never been hidden inside a palace or an ancient bloodline. It had quietly lived within the compassionate heart of the healer a single pack had chosen to leave behind. The days that followed transformed Ashen-Crowned Citadel in ways no celebration ever had. Instead of grand festivals, the palace became a place of quiet hope. Scholars reopened forgotten libraries, physicians compared ancient records with new observations, and every morning Lucien welcomed Evelyn into the royal healing gardens where winter roses somehow continued to bloom beneath a blanket of snow. The curse had not vanished completely, yet with every passing day its shadows grew weaker whenever she was near. There were no dramatic miracles, only small, undeniable changes. Lucien slept peacefully through the night for the first time in years. The constant exhaustion faded from his eyes. His laughter, once remembered only in stories told by longtime servants, slowly returned to the palace halls. The people noticed before anyone announced it. Soon hopeful whispers spread across the kingdom, not about magic, but about kindness. Evelyn never asked for recognition. She spent her mornings helping palace physicians care for the elderly, comforting frightened children visiting the citadel, and tending injured birds that landed in the royal gardens. She treated everyone with the same quiet compassion she had shown the wounded wolf beside the frozen stream. She remembered every name, thanked every worker, and listened more than she spoke. One clear evening beneath a brilliant full moon, the royal council gathered in the grand hall along with representatives from every major pack across the northern territories. Frostpine's leaders stood among them, their expressions marked not by pride but by humility. Lucien rose from the ancient throne, yet instead of addressing the assembly from above, he descended the marble steps until he stood beside Evelyn. The entire hall fell silent. "Strength is often mistaken for power," Lucien said, his calm voice carrying through the chamber. "But true strength is revealed by compassion when no reward is expected." He turned toward Evelyn with a warm smile. "When I was alone beneath the weight of an ancient curse, she did not see a king. She saw someone in need of help. That choice changed not only my life, but the future of this kingdom." Elder Marcus stepped forward from the Frostpine delegation. He bowed deeply before Evelyn, this time not out of obligation but with sincere respect. "We failed to recognize the greatest gift our pack had ever known," he said quietly. "We judged with fear instead of wisdom. We ask for your forgiveness, not because we deserve it, but because we hope to become better than we were." Evelyn looked at the faces of those who had once turned away from her. The old pain had softened into understanding. She smiled gently. "I forgive you," she said. "Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it allows the future to begin." Lucien then accepted a beautifully crafted silver cloak embroidered with the royal crest. Rather than placing it upon his own shoulders, he carefully draped it around Evelyn. The gesture required no explanation. Every person present understood its meaning. She had earned the highest honor in the kingdom not through birth, wealth, or ambition, but through the quiet courage to remain kind after being rejected. As moonlight poured through the towering windows, the final traces of shadow disappeared from Lucien's hands, dissolving into the silver light without a sound. The royal physician smiled through grateful tears, knowing the ancient curse had finally released its hold. Only peaceful silence filled the hall as everyone witnessed hope restored. Standing together beneath the moon that had guided them to one another, Lucien and Evelyn looked toward the future with steady hearts. The kingdom never forgot that the healer once called broken became the light that healed a king and proved true strength is always gentle.